Coming up on this Friday edition of Newsline at Noon, in the midst of all the political wrangling over putting the Prime Minister nominee's confirmation to a vote, the main opposition party proposes conducting a public opinion poll on the nominee's confirmation. Korea's nuclear watchdog again postpones the decision on whether to restart the nation's second oldest nuclear reactor or to shut it down forever. After all-night talks between the leaders of Germany, France, Ukraine, and Russia, there's now an agreement for a ceasefire to end the fighting in eastern Ukraine. These stories and more coming right up. Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Newsline at Noon. I'm Lee Jun in Seoul.
And I'm Mark Broom. Thank you ever so much for joining us. Today, we start with the political wrangling over the planned confirmation of Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo. The two main parties had agreed on Thursday to postpone the plenary vote until next Monday, but the main opposition party, which has major objections to Lee becoming PM, now says it has another proposal.
Yes, and our National Assembly correspondent Park Ji-won has the story.
The new leader of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy Party has a fresh proposal regarding the confirmation of Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo. Speaking at the party's Supreme Council meeting on Friday morning, Moon proposed the presidential office and ruling Saenuri Party conduct a public opinion poll on the nominee's confirmation, saying his party is ready to accept the result. The former presidential candidate added that his party is facing a difficult situation. He said the party doesn't want to cause a vacuum in state affairs, but stressed that given the allegations surrounding his past, the nominee does not have the qualifications to be prime minister. Moon urged the nominee to think deeply about what he can do to not burden the president, indicating he thinks the nominee should withdraw. In response, ruling Saenuri Party floor leader Yoo Seung-min said it was regrettable that the opposition party had changed its proposed plan overnight. Yoo reiterated that the rival parties had agreed Thursday to push the vote back until Monday and stressed that his party will go ahead with the vote on Monday as planned. The ruling Saenuri Party holds a majority in the assembly, and if it wanted to, it could go ahead with the vote on its own. However, experts say it's not likely, as the presidential office has already been criticized for its lack of communication and unwillingness to compromise, especially regarding personnel. The burden of pushing the confirmation through might be too heavy for the administration and could potentially cripple future assembly sessions. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, postponing the vote on the Prime Minister nominee would mean that President Park Geun-hye will have to wait until next week to carry out her cabinet reshuffle, which was originally expected to happen sometime this week. For more on what we can expect from this point on, here's our Choi Yoo-san.
On Thursday, the spokesperson at the presidential office of Cheongwade said President Park stands by the principle of carrying out the reshuffles after the Prime Minister nominee is approved and recommends her cabinet. The National Assembly Speaker has said the Parliament will vote on Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo on Monday, with or without the opposition party present. That means the president's shakeups are likely to occur the same day or the next. With her economic revitalization plan and reform drive in need of a boost and her approval ratings hitting an all-time low, the president is expected to waste no time appointing people to get state business on track. Reports of Korean ambassador to China Kwon Young-se's pending replacement Thursday roused speculation that Kwon, one of President Park's confidants, may be named the new presidential chief of staff. Current Chief of Staff Kim Ki-chun is widely speculated to step down after completing the reorganization of the presidential office. 2 to 3 cabinet ministers are likely to be replaced. A ruling party lawmaker close to the president, Yoo Ki-jun, is the highly anticipated candidate for Oceans Minister, while the Unification and Transport Ministers are other positions that could also be changed. President Park, who had named special advisors to bolster communication in running the country, is also set to announce a lineup of her political advisors. Choi Yoo-sun, Arirang News.
A Seoul court has sentenced the former vice president of Korean Air to 1 year in prison for violating aviation safety law by ordering a taxiing plane to return to the gate. Choi Yeon-ah, the eldest daughter of the airline's chairman, ordered a senior crew member to deplane in New York last December for not serving her nuts, according to the first-class manual. Judge Oh Sung-woo said the incident is a case where, quote, human dignity was trampled on. The court also said although it took into consideration that Jo was the mother of 20-month-old twins, her actions still, quote, harmed the victims. Jo had pleaded innocent to the charge, arguing the airport runway was not part of the flight path. The court, however, said the air path covers the entire course from departure to arrival, which includes the runway. Prosecutors had initially sought a 3-year prison term for Jo early this month. Korea has condemned a Japanese diplomat's comments claiming sovereignty over the Korea-controlled Dokdo Island in the East Sea. Seoul's foreign ministry says such claims are an act of historical regression and shows that Japan has not repented for its imperialistic past, including its colonization of Korea. This comes after Japanese Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida's speech in Parliament on Thursday, during which he said Dokdo is part of Japan's territory. Korea warned Japan to not counter efforts to bring peace, stability, and co-prosperity to Northeast Asia. It added that Seoul will firmly respond to Tokyo's claims to Dokdo, which is Korean territory by history, geography, and international law.
North Korea's ruling Communist Party has issued a resolution that states the country will focus on developing cutting-edge weaponry. Pyongyang's state-run Korean Central News Agency reported Friday that the decision was reached during a meeting on Tuesday that was held to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the establishment of the Central Committee's Political Bureau of the Workers' Party. Attending the session, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said Pyongyang will prepare for modern warfare by developing high-precision, light, unmanned and intelligent weapons systems. The resolution also stated the importance of arming the people and fortifying the country to win a showdown with the United States. The North also declared it would launch an independent reunification campaign with South Korea and try to improve diplomatic ties with other nations. The United States has a new defense secretary after the Senate overwhelmingly approved Ashton Carter in a bipartisan 93-5 vote. Carter will most likely be sworn in early next week. He has a lot on his plate as he gears up to start his new role, with the United States facing numerous, highly complex national security challenges across the world, including the increasingly intense fight against the extremist group that calls itself Islamic State. Carter, an author and physicist, was Deputy Secretary of Defense between 2011 and 2013. The 60-year-old replaces Chuck Hagel, who stepped down after less than 2 years on the job. Now, Palestine will become an official member of the International Criminal Court on April 1st, seeking justice from last summer's 50-day violence in Gaza. Our Hwang Sang-yi sat down with the Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki for an exclusive interview on what the ICC membership means to Palestine.
We are seeking, partial, proportional kind of justice. Yes, we have suffered a lot since the Israeli occupation that have really started in 1967. And if justice and investigation by the ICC will also include what Palestinians have done in the latest Israeli aggression, well, we are ready to receive that investigation and also to respond to that investigation. We have nothing really to hide, and we are seeking justice, even if that means we have to pay a certain price.
But the United States said it will cut off aid to Palestine if it joins ICC. Aren't you worried?
We are worried, absolutely, we are worried, because we receive almost $450 million a year in terms of aid from the United States to Palestinian economy and infrastructure. But unfortunately, the United States opposition to our accession is due to the fact that the United States believes that such accession might really undermine the image of the State of Israel. If Israel didn't do anything in violation of international law, and if Israel believes that it didn't commit any crime against the Palestinian people, why Israel or the United States of America are afraid from us being member of the International Criminal Court?
At this point, is Palestine willing to talk things out with Israel?
We have tried through U.S. intermediary to be able to find a solution to the conflict through 9 months negotiations, which has really failed due to the intransigence on the Israeli side. The question is Israel ready to re-engage again? And I will tell you that Israel is not ready. And we have to wait until after elections to see if there is any partner on the Israeli side who is willing really to engage in serious negotiations that will put an end to Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories and will allow the establishment of an independent Palestinian state that will live side by side with the State of Israel.
Has the unity government with Hamas come to an end?
Well, no, it didn't come to an end yet. Yes, I admit we have so many obstacles. Yes, I admit that Hamas is not collaborating enough in order really to see that the government takes full responsibility in Gaza. For that purpose, the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is going to dispatch this week a high-level delegation of the PLO to Gaza to enter into discussions with Hamas in order for the Palestinian government to be able to work fully and responsibly, in Gaza, and to provide the type of services that is needed by the Palestinian people in Gaza.
Is the Palestinian Authority standing behind reports that ISIS is operating inside the Gaza Strip?
Well, I wonder, is that really true? I don't think that's really true. There are rumors that, there are maybe sympathizers with ISIS in Gaza, the way that we have seen sympathizers with ISIS in most of the European countries. But, we are taking this issue seriously, and we are taking all preventive measures in order to prevent any kind of situation to emerge in that nature.
Thank you, Minister, for your time today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
After all-night talks between the leaders of Germany, France, Ukraine, and Russia, there is now an agreement for a ceasefire to end the fighting in eastern Ukraine. Our Kim In-jae reports.
Peace talks aimed at ending the deadly fighting in eastern Ukraine have concluded with a breakthrough. A ceasefire is set to be implemented starting midnight on Friday 15th in parts of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. The agreement was reached after a 16-hour talk between leaders of Russia, Ukraine, France, and Germany.
It wasn't the very best night of my life, but the morning in my view was kind, because despite all of the difficulties in the process, we managed to agree on the main issues.
I can say that everything was difficult, and in fact various unacceptable conditions were put to us, conditions of retreat, of surrender.
The specifics will now need to be ironed out, but the deal also calls for Ukrainian forces and pro-Russian rebels to withdraw their heavy weapons from the front lines to create a buffer zone of 50 kilometers. It also calls for constitutional reform to grant eastern Ukraine more autonomy. Now the question is, will the ceasefire hold, as the summit talks came amid bloody clashes between the Ukrainian army and rebels? But if it does, it will bring an end to the 10-month conflict that has claimed more than 5,000 lives. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said the European Union could impose further sanctions should the deal fail to be fully implemented. A ceasefire in September fell apart within days as both sides tried to expand their areas of control. The agreement came as the IMF announced a bailout program of $17.5 billion for Ukraine, which is part of an economic revitalization plan that aims to create a $40 billion lifeline for the war-torn country. The World Bank will also provide $2 billion of that package. Kim In-jae, Arirang News.
A decision on whether to close one of Korea's longest-serving nuclear power reactors has been postponed. Local residents and environmentalists have been calling for the immediate closure of the 32-year-old Walsong-1 reactor, primarily out of safety concerns. Kwon So-ah reports.
오늘도 굉장히 긴 하루가 될 것으로 예상을 합니다.
Delayed once again. Despite a marathon meeting on Thursday, the fate of Korea's second oldest nuclear reactor hangs in the balance, with a third meeting on the issue scheduled for the end of this month. Korea's nuclear watchdog needs to decide on whether to restart the Walsong-1 reactor or to shut it down forever. The nuclear plant, one of 23 in the nation, was temporarily shut down for review after it reached its designed lifespan. Last October, the Nuclear Safety Board evaluated the Walsong-1 as safe to go for another 10 years. It's not uncommon practice to extend the life of reactors. The oldest Kori-1 reactor is already 8 years into an extension it received in 2007. Those arguing for an extension not only cite safety, but that it costs less than building a new plant and is less harmful to the environment. But residents of Gyeongju, where the plant is located, and environmentalist groups see the issue differently, claiming the reactor has to be shut down immediately and permanently. The debate has been growing since Korea's state-run nuclear power agency called for an expansion of the Walsong-1 reactor's lifespan in 2009. Demonstrators gathered in front of the Nuclear Commission's headquarters, raising safety concerns which could lead to a disaster like Japan's Fukushima accident.
We are worried about nuclear radiation. They say the amount is less than what comes from taking an X-ray, but we don't take X-rays 365 days a year. We do breathe in the air every day.
With even experts divided on the issue, more deliberation on the matter seems unavoidable. And adding extra weight to the Walsong-1 decision is a line of other aging reactors waiting to be judged on their operational lifespans. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
The Korean government is looking to give the nation's infrastructure-focused construction companies the best shot at cracking markets overseas. Korea's Land and Infrastructure Ministry signed an agreement with various public agencies, including the Korea Investment Corporation, on Friday that will see the creation of a joint task force. Now, this team will be in charge of researching the investment environments of various overseas markets and identifying new business opportunities.
Well, Korean memory chip makers continue to dominate the global DRAM market, but their combined grip on the overall chip market has loosened slightly. Market tracker DRAM Exchange says their combined market share was slightly over 74% during the September to December period, down 4 percentage points from the previous quarter. Samsung Electronics' market share dropped more than 5 percentage points from the previous quarter to just over 46%. SK hynix only increased its share by 0.4 percentage points during the same period to 28%. Well, we'll continue our look through the global headlines we're following this Friday lunchtime from Seoul. For that, we turn to Eunice Kim standing by at the News Center.
Eunice, another strike against Islamic State militants, this time at the United Nations. It has passed a resolution intended to stop money from flowing into the extremist group.
That's right, Mark. It is a significant legally binding resolution drafted by Russia and co-sponsored by the U.S. as well as its European allies. It addresses revenue streams from 3 different areas: black market oil, Syrian antiquities, and ransom payments.
We believe this is the type of case which clearly shows the need for the use of collective efforts to resolve issues we are facing. Having adopted Resolution 2199, we took yet another very important step in suppressing the funding of terrorists first and foremost as a result of the illegal trafficking of oil.
Now, all 15 member states of the UN Security Council voted unanimously to adopt this resolution that targets both the Islamic State and Syria's al-Nusra Front. It bans all trade of historical artifacts from Syria, which the UN believes IS is looting and selling to support their work. A November report also had estimated that the extremist group makes roughly $1 million a day from selling stolen oil, though U.S. officials estimate that figure to have fallen significantly since then. The UN resolution also urged countries to choose not to pay ransoms, as the world body estimates IS raises up to raises about $100,000 a day from such payments. And an Egyptian court has said the two remaining Al Jazeera journalists under detention for allegedly supporting the Muslim Brotherhood should be freed after posting bail. Relatives were visibly taken with joy when they heard the announcement in the Cairo courtroom. The development comes less than 2 weeks after their Australian colleague Peter Greste was deported back home. But the court said it would move ahead with a retrial of Mohammed Fahmy and Bahar Mohammed, with the next session set for February 23rd. The high-profile case has been a lightning rod of criticism for suppression of free speech. And finally, the European Central Bank has raised its emergency liquidity assistance to banks in debt-strapped Greece. This according to sources in the industry. Reports say the ceiling was raised by 5 billion euros, or about $5.7 billion US dollars, to 65 billion euros. This development coming as anti-austerity Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras took his new government's debt and reform plan to an EU summit in Brussels. Last week, the central bank had announced it would no longer accept Greek sovereign bonds as collateral for future loans.
Well, back here in Korea, 5 years ago, new pieces of movable metal type were discovered by a professor here in Korea who claimed they were the world's oldest, dating back hundreds of years before the previous discovery. Now, experts here in Korea are going to launch a final investigation to lay any remaining questions to rest. Here's our Son Jang-in with more.
The world's oldest movable metal type is from Korea, but it may be different from what was previously known. Nam Kwon-hee, a professor of bibliography at Gyeongbuk National University, discovered new pieces of movable metal type in 2010, but since then it has been at the center of an investigation into its authenticity. The National Research Institute of Cultural Heritage recently said they had concluded that the type and the book printed from it, called Jungdo Gaja, is authentic. The institute says it was presumed to have been printed during the Goryeo dynasty between 1033 and 1155, which is hundreds of years earlier than what was previously known to be the oldest metal type print, 직지 심체 요절, as confirmed by UNESCO. A separate investigative team at the Cultural Heritage Administration said they will launch their own investigation with the aim of designating the relics as national cultural property. If approved, Jungdo Gaja would be the world's oldest movable metal type, a highly significant cultural achievement. But it certainly won't be easy. For one thing, the members of the Cultural Heritage Administration have set terms that end in April, so the investigation is likely to be postponed until the new members take over. And questions still remain, as the team that verified the type as authentic includes Professor Nam. Son Jang-in, Arirang News.
Now, Sex and the City, Prison Break, House of Cards, Law and Order. They are all very familiar titles, hit American TV shows that have won worldwide acclaim and popularity as well. The producers and directors of these shows are currently in Korea, and they're here to share their insights. But, as our Connie Lee tells us, some of them are actually looking to Korean dramas for some new inspiration.
It's one of the major cultural exports pumped out of Korea. Korean TV shows, more simply known as K-dramas, are becoming a source of inspiration for TV producers outside of the country.
I really believe that Korea is the next frontier.
The next frontier?
That's why I'm here. One of the reasons we came is we've already optioned a number of formats, Korean formats.
Marty Alderstein, a top producer of the popular American TV series Prison Break and Last Man Standing, is now in Seoul, and he's on the lookout. At the Content Insight seminar hosted by the Korea Creative Content Agency, he and other industry leaders spoke on what really makes for good TV.
What people want to watch are characters and storytelling. One of the Israeli channels told me that Korean soap operas sell really well in Israel, and that sort of piqued my interest. I couldn't figure out why, and then I understood because the strong storylines and the attractiveness of the people, and they sell very well around the world.
Exports of Korean TV content have been steadily increasing in recent years, with about 24 countries on the receiving end. And now there looks to be greater potential for continued growth, with more show producers looking abroad for the best story ideas.
It's happening all the time right now. It's kind of all the rage.
John David Coles, who directed hit shows like Sex and the City and most currently House of Cards, credits his own success to strong storylines that are culturally transcendent.
Because at the heart, there's a simple, strong premise. That's a story, really, not a complicated plot.
Connie Lee, Arirang News.
All right, that wraps up today's edition of Newsline at Noon. Thanks for watching.
Yes, have a wonderful weekend. Goodbye.